Hello, Julie.
Hi, Sarah. Good afternoon.
Oh, it is an afternoon. It's a beautiful afternoon.
Beautiful afternoon. Maybe one of the last that isn't freezing for us.
Yes, I mean, I think that the outside weather is not necessarily reflective of the astro weather right now.
Well, the astro weather is for the whole planet. The outside weather is very local.
Yeah, it's been beautiful locally, but the astro weather has been a bit disturbing, I have to say. It hasn't been disturbing for the last 2 years, but I don't know. I find a lot of people got rocked this weekend with very shocking and disturbing news, and a little bit darker than even Scorpio season would have it be this season. So can you explain to us what is happening?
I can explain the astrology of it, yeah.
Yes.
There was a new moon, and the new moon was on the 4th of November.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty well exactly opposite Uranus in Taurus. So the new moon was in Scorpio, and Uranus, whatever you want to call it, was in Taurus, and they were opposite each other. So oppositions are just like they sound. They're oppositional. They're so me and you, right?
They're like mano y mano. They were
right, exactly. And Uranus in Taurus is basically, we've been calling this year the rock and the hard place.
Yeah.
I don't know which is the rock and which is the hard place, but Uranus is half that equation. And Uranus has basically been saying, this is what's happening in the real world, and it's breaking apart. It's Uranus is change and crisis and chaos, and Taurus is the real world. Mm-hmm. Right. And so Uranus and Taurus holds that awareness that we have. It's COP 26. It's that thing. It's climate change conference. It's all that stuff. And the new moon in Scorpio is like, oh, we're getting ready for a descent. We're getting ready to go in. We're getting ready to process something. The leaves are falling off the trees. We're getting ready to die. And you're telling us, it's like you're telling me on my deathbed, I have to get up and make some change. Like, forget it. So there was a challenge there that was pretty much another iteration of the rock and the hard place, saying basically you must change, but the feeling is I can't change, or I'm at the mercy of energies that are so much more powerful than I am. I don't have any, it's not like I have any choices. Mm-hmm. And that's the theme of the year. And the new moon was just activating it. A new moon is always
yeah, I'm wondering if because the moon was involved, it makes it more personal. Like we've all been watching it.
We're all feeling it personally, but yes, the new moon is a time when we're supposed to take the temperature of our intentions. Mm-hmm. So we have to set our intentions against the situation in the world, and it's impossible to do it. The other thing, if it's not too much astrology that's been going on with that new moon, is that the Mars was not quite conjunct the new moon, but it's in Scorpio and it was in the same sign as the new moon. And Saturn wasn't exactly square the new moon, but it's moving forward towards that degree. But so if you did the chart of the new moon, you would see Mars in Scorpio and Saturn in Aquarius. But if you progress Mars and Saturn to today, for example, you get the exact square of Mars and Saturn. So that was also happening in the chart of the new moon. So I feel like if you're boiling it down to the personal, what you've got is people saying, okay, I want to take charge. I want to transform myself, to do the work that has to get done. But the circumstances are so out of your control that it's hard to just feel your personal ability to make the transformation.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense for what I've been hearing from people. It just feels so and even some shocking news, which might be Uranus involved.
Uranus is shocking.
Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. And so
it's shocking news, but it's also not shocking if you've been paying attention. What's really shocking is that you don't know what to do about it.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the way, there's a sort of a collective, like, how do I align myself as an individual with these world events? How do I get on board with, and how do I even begin to mount my intention towards something?
So how do I align myself with a train wreck, right? All I can do is relax. The only way to align yourself when you're dealing with Scorpio is to relax.
Right. And that's not Scorpio's natural posture.
It should be. It is. The best Scorpio is about letting go without giving up.
Okay.
Letting go as in surrender without capitulation.
Okay. That's actually very helpful.
It is.
Because a Scorpio in challenge is a Scorpio that can't let go, right? A Scorpio in challenge wants to hold on to the death.
To control. Scorpio wants mastery over.
Yeah.
But Scorpio is really only good when it's fully present to the reality of change, and it relaxes into it.
Okay.
Because if you're relaxed,
real Buddhism here, right? Like the only thing that we can build or stay attached to is the fact that things are going to change.
Yeah, but it could be Wicca. You know, she changes everything she touches.
Okay.
Everything she touches changes.
It could be any other thing that I don't know, but we can identify Wiccan and Buddhist thoughts in there.
I'm good.
Feel free in the comments if you want to add any other belief structures. So that's actually really good advice, I think, for this time, is to, even though you don't feel like there's anything you can do, you can relax and you can learn how to surrender. And it is a perfect time to learn meditation, to learn actual structures for learning how to surrender, not capitulate, but surrender, and be present to what is. Yeah.
Right. So relaxing doesn't mean dissociate.
Right. Or tuning out and watching TV.
No, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that at all.
It means being totally present in allowing what's happening.
It means remembering to drop your shoulders, to breathe down low in your belly,
to ground into your feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it means, yeah.
Yeah. So moving into the full moon that's coming up on the 17th, I believe it is, or the 19th?
I think it's the 19th. It's the 19th.
And does that kick off eclipse season?
I'm not a big eclipse season fan. I mean, there are eclipse seasons, of course, twice a year. What I think this full moon is kicking off, so the full moon is in Taurus, like the moon will be in Taurus and the sun will be in Scorpio. And the north and south node are always near an eclipse, right? That's what makes an eclipse, so to speak, astrologically, is the lining up. Eclipses are when the sun and the moon and the earth line up in the same plane, right? That's why they happen, because a regular new moon or full moon isn't lined up in the same plane. It's only that period, that point twice a year when the sun, the moon, and the earth are in alignment. And this eclipse is only a partial eclipse. It's not a full eclipse, but which is it's a little less portentous, whatever. But what I see in this full moon is that the nodes are going to go back in January. The nodes are going to leave Sag and Gemini, and they're going to go into Taurus and Scorpio. And the focus is going to move away from misinformation, lies, all that stuff. And it's going to
air travel to foreign places.
All those things. Yeah. It's going to move away from all that kind of
issues,
and it's going to move towards real things. It's going to move towards, supply and demand, all that stuff.
I
And,
see. So we can say about the nodes, like what the nodes are when we look at the nodes, they're basically the themes that are in the conversations that are in the air that we're dealing with. Is that right? What the nodes signify? Like the theme of the day? No.
I don't know if the nodes hold the reins of the themes of the year. It's just part of the picture. I mean, the South Node is what's behind us. It's the past. Now it's becoming more common to think of it as decrease. It's what decreases things. And the North Node is what we're leaning into, what we have to deal with. It's the growing edge, right? It's increase.
Right. So with with the nodes in Sagittarius, South Node in Sagittarius, we're saying goodbye to foreign travel and and tribal thinking and
Yes.
Yeah, and just
and snake oil. Yeah.
Belief without knowledge. And we're heading towards, hopefully heading towards information, more information, things like that. That's not what happened, but that's kind of the idea of how it happens.
It's the issue. It stirs up the issue. The nodes aren't particularly well-meaning.
Okay.
They're karmic, right? They show you where the crevice is.
Okay. Right. Okay, that's interesting. So it shows you, yeah, okay. So it's moving into South Node in Taurus and North Node in South
Node in Taurus.
North Node in Taurus. Okay.
South Node in Scorpio.
Okay. So the crevice
the South Node is the mess we've made.
Yeah.
Scorpio rules excrement, among other things. Right. And you know how miserable you are if you cannot excrete.
Yeah, it's pretty close to godliness to be able to have a good bowel movement.
That's right. It puts people in a bad mood. Right. So Scorpio South Node is about the mess we've made or the constipation around that mess. And the North Node is what we have to roll up our sleeves and just get into, right? My little Taurus. Here's my Taurus.
As the symbol of Taurus, the speaker of Taurus, representative. And then, like you said, it's practical. Like it's what is. It's like it's here. It's not just talking about things. It's like what really is actually happening. And so that's where the full moon's going to be. And that's where the focus is going to be.
So I think this full moon eclipse is inviting us to understand where we're going when those nodes shift.
Okay. Is that like climate? Is that the climate talks? Is that like?
So it's all that stuff. Yeah. Climate talks are over this week, I think.
Okay. So on the 19th, we're going to look for the themes that arise in our day or what we're aware of in terms of
full moons are always about pain. A full moon, you see things in the dark that you wouldn't see normally. So you could say the full moon makes it safer to go out at night. So you're looking at these things. You're looking at the past and what doesn't add up, what just needs to be let go of, that kind of thing. And looking ahead, you're looking at how you're going to get through the winter. What resources you have, how you're managing your resources, that kind of thing.
That makes a lot of sense. Like I've already heard some people talk about like, okay, it's already starting to get darker. There's already starting to be less light. How am I going to, I used to love going bike riding. How am I going to manage? I've actually heard this conversation. How am I going to manage getting through the winter without the things that support me? What other supports can I find to help me to manage my well-being, my mental health, or maybe finances or whatever through
so there might be something at the full moon that we see that helps us do that. The full moon is not exactly square Jupiter, but the strongest aspect, I think, would be the square to Jupiter that it makes the night before. So yeah, there might be some awareness of what the resource could be.
Okay. So we'll keep our eyes open for that.
I don't think anyone's going to get through the winter all by themselves. I mean, even if we live alone, I still think, you know, the square to Jupiter suggests to me that there has to be some, you know, I hear people talking just in Toronto about the fact that they don't have enough teachers for the, you know, the city yoga classes and stuff like that the city offers, right? And so there's a problem there because a lot of people need that stuff to get through the winter.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And then the main event of what I wanted to talk to you about today is the grand finale of 2021 with the last Uranus Saturn square that is the last of the 3 full squares of the rock and the hard place, which you and Aerin talked about at the beginning of the year. I still recommend people, if you have a chance to go and buy that workshop on Julie's website, to do that, because it has been so instructional and so, I'm going to say the word prophetic in terms of what we were going to face this year. And it was really helpful to have that framework to navigate the year with, and it's still operative and will be operative next year to a degree. So I think it's one of the resources.
It's going to be very operative next year. The bad news is that the last exact square is on the 24th of December, Christmas Eve. But in 2022, Saturn will make a station at 18 degrees of Aquarius, and Uranus will make a station at 18 degrees of Taurus. And although these stations won't happen in the same month, they will happen in the same year. And so the square is still going to be pretty operative. Later degrees, it's going to move on a little, but they're still speaking to each other across the month.
They're still having the conversation.
Conversation is still happening, yeah.
And as we were saying about the opposition of what this means, a square is definitely a challenge, a tension.
A square is a rock and a hard place in any case, because a square means that the 2 planets involved, it's like one of those 3-legged races or something. Like you can't get where you're going without dealing with the other being, but you really don't like any of the plans that they have for getting you there.
That's true. I don't like 3-legged races. Nobody does. But they're funny to watch.
They're funny to watch. So a square demands consciousness. It demands that we do the work. It's work.
And working together. Like you have to maybe work with an energy that you're not really very comfortable with to get to the resolution of it.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. I still recommend people get that workshop because it will still be operative next year. So
it will.
I have to share this, Julie, how in the workshop you use the myth of Hydra to explain what's coming up this year. And I'll be honest, I didn't know what the myth of Hydra was. I didn't know this character in Greek mythology at all. But I've heard the term Hydra. I don't think I've ever heard it before. 3 times this year.
Oh, interesting.
3 times. And there was that article I sent you about speaking about the supply chain issues of the Hydra, of being a Hydra of bottlenecks, and Hydra being the goddess of heads. They were saying that not only is it a bottleneck, it's like an 8-headed bottleneck, but they used the term Hydra, which you had used at the beginning of the year. And I was just like, she knows what she's talking about.
I just pull it right out of the sky.
So we've got the square, and we have the Venus retrograde coming up in December 19th, I believe. And so I want to talk a little bit about that period of time, the end of December, just talking a little bit about Venus retrograde and how we can navigate through that.
Yeah, Venus retrograde is fascinating. I mean, it's the origin of an ancient religion that was thousands of years, that was practiced for thousands of years. So the idea is Venus is the goddess in the sky, right? It's the most beautiful planet up there, and it's so bright. It's next to the moon. It's the next brightest thing. And for about 9 months, Venus is the evening star. And then, which is, it is now, if you look in the west, you can see Venus after the sun sets. But as we get closer to the retrograde, starting about now, actually, no, starting when it's retrograde, you can still see it. But as Venus goes retrograde, it gets pulled in closer, and it appears to be pulled in closer and closer to the sun. And when it eventually conjuncts the sun, you can't see it, right? It disappears.
Mhm.
So, and then when it returns to the sky again, it returns as the morning star, and not the evening, not in the evening sky. It returns as the morning star planet, and it spends 9 months as the morning star, and then it doesn't go retrograde at the end of that, but it does disappear and then reappear as the evening star.
So you literally see it has periods of being seen at night and then seen in the morning.
Right. So Venus at night, where it is now, is considered Aphrodite. It's the goddess of beauty and love and art and all those, and pleasure, right? And good things, all the things we actually associate Venus with. But Venus is the morning star. Actually, I think in the Mayans, they didn't even think it was the same star. They saw Venus as the morning star, as the, the call to war, like as a rally to war, because Venus is the morning star, and it is still Venus, is much more about determination. And okay, so what are you going to do? So the ancient religion was basically took the journey of Venus and used it as a template for loss, grief, and life goes on, right? So the grief part is it's the descent of the goddess, of the goddess Inanna. You can read, there's a nice book called The Descent of the Goddess. It's all over the internet if you look it up. So the Queen of Heaven has to go down into the underworld because her sister's husband died and she's a wreck. So to get down to the underworld, she has to slip through 7 gates, one for each planet. And at each gate, she has to surrender something like her crown, her jewels, her breastplate, her weapon, everything. And by the time she gets down to the last gate where she's conjunct the sun, she's naked and bowed low. So even though she's the Queen of Heaven, she's just as naked as anybody else would be without all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So she's humbled. And she gets down there, feeling like she's done something, for her sister. And her sister looks at her and does what sisters do. She kills her. She hangs her on a meat hook. Jesus. And because her rage, her grief is so intense that it's rage. She's enraged that she lost something that she values so much.
Is her sister Inanna?
Erish Kegel. Her sister is Erish Kegel, or Erish Kegel, or however you say it. Erish Kegel if you're from New York. Erish Kegel, I think is the real pronunciation. I don't know. Anyway, and then Venus returns as the morning star. So the story goes that when Venus returned as the morning star, she had to go back up through the 7 gates, one for each planet, and she took back what the trappings of her power. But this time she wasn't just going up there for beauty and art. This time she was going up there to reclaim her throne. Mm-hmm. Right? And so she's determined. And the last Venus retrograde was when George Floyd was murdered, right, in public. And it was in Gemini. And, his last words were, "I can't breathe," right? Gemini is the breath. And the grief and the rage of that erupted into Black Lives Matter, which is a very determined, focused, issue.
Movement forward.
Movement. Yeah. And I mean, it's great. It's what needed to happen, unfortunately. So every Venus retrograde, I mean, that's one of the more dramatic Venus retrogrades. It happens every 18 months, but every Venus retrograde has something like that's going on. And for individuals, if it hits your chart, that's what it's saying. So this Venus retrograde, so that Venus retrograde, the last one was squaring Neptune. This Venus retrograde is conjuncting Pluto. And and Pluto, you know, like 2020 was brought to us by Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter in Capricorn. This Venus retrograde is going to go back over all those degrees that those Capricorn planets covered in 2020. It's so symbolically specific about the fact that we have to look back to 2020 and ask ourselves what we've lost that we're not getting back. And it's so interesting that it happens around Christmas, and that, you know, our Christmas is the solstice. It's a universally celebrated acknowledgement of the first day of winter and the birth of the new year and everything, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. And we have degenerated into celebrating it with, you know, kind of a consumer mentality. And, you know, Venus and Pluto are saying, you know, container ships, you're not going to get what you want.
Yeah.
Right? It's not sustainable to welcome the new year in that way anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's not a big loss for a lot of people, but it, you know, it can be for some people.
Well, like you said, it's because Venus is in Capricorn, which rules material things from the earth, and you know, which is the height of capitalism. There might be the need to, like you were saying, review that and return to the actual spirit of what Christmas is, which is the return of the light.
Ideally. I mean, I feel a little bit preachy when I talk like this, and I hate that voice when it comes out of me, but but it does seem like there's a lesson in Venus retrograde about sustainability and what is and isn't sustainable. And the fact that it's in Capricorn conjunct Pluto suggests that there are losses that will not come back. We have lost, you know, it's like someone dies, they're not coming back. I mean, maybe they'll come back in another life, but they're not coming back in the form that you recognize them in.
Right.
So the Venus retrograde conjunct Pluto is asking us to look at what has been lost and to grieve it, to grieve for the loss, and then to get on with it, to get on with what has to be gotten on with. It's a perfect old year, new year timing, although it's random, right? Last one was in May and June. This one just happens to be in December, January. And it happens to be, and the nodes shifting into Taurus is also not, there's no astrological reason for those two things to be happening at the same time, but the messages are similar in a way.
Yeah. So just to review, you're saying that Venus in its retrograde is going to go over the exact degrees that the planets that kicked off the pandemic were in. So that's why it's going to be a review of the last 2 years, because it's like literally revisiting the exact location where this all went down.
That's right.
In the room where Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter all made this happen. They didn't make it happen, but where
Pluto's still there. So if you're now, you know, now the job is to bring it down to the individual level, because none of us are gonna set the policies of the future for next year. But,
so we're gonna go through this period of sort of reviewing that, and like you said, in the 3 stages of the Venus retrograde, there's the grief, the feeling of the grief, and then the awareness that something has been lost, and the grief and the rage that comes with that. But then on the way out, as Venus comes up into the morning star, and she reclaims her breastplate and her weapons and her tiara and her
determination,
she comes back with determination on the throne, knowing how she wants to go forward and how to move forward and what to.
And knowing that life goes on. She has to go forward. I don't know if you've ever lost someone that you love and you have a funeral and you just want to, you know, take a year off or the rest of your life off to mourn. People show up with food and they tell stories and they want you to go to the movies. And like life just relentlessly demands that we keep living it, and that's as it should be. And so the Venus, the second half of the Venus retrograde is about, so what are we going to do? Let's do it. It could be a wonderful affirmation of making things work more sustainably.
Yeah. And I think what I appreciate about understanding the processes is that, within every process there's a necessary there's a necessary movement in it. There's maybe really terrible things, but there's also very necessary things and positive things that happen. It's never just one thing. It's never just, this is great or this is awful. It's a process. And when you can get on board and understand, death is a part of life, and not just people dying, but like having to let go. Even being a mother and watching your child move from one stage to another stage, there's a death that happens, but a new life that happens. And we have to sort of mark these times and honor what they were so that we can move on. So it's
just
always
a goddamn process of losses, but then it's gains, then it's change. And it's like, it's truly a mystical thing, to actually allow yourself to go through it. So, I think each and every one of us has Venus retrograde in a particular part of our chart. And Aerin and I are doing yet another workshop. If anyone's interested, we're calling it Rebuilding Fallen Structures.
Okay, good. Because the Venus retrograde and Pluto are right on my Venus, so I'm definitely going to show up in the front row on Zoom, of course. But I'm gonna need some support through that. But I will put that in the comments below where to sign up for your workshop.
Yeah, so each and every person has Venus retrograde in a particular house in their chart, and it tells you where you need to do the letting go and where you need to do the determining how to go forward. It astrology gives us those pointers, which, after all these years, I still find useful and entertaining.
It's true. It gives a framework for what is the program that I have to get on board with here. So
right. Where can I focus my thoughts about this? Yeah.
Right. And that's the tool of it, not to necessarily be like, what's going to happen? It's like, it doesn't almost even matter what's going to happen as much as, well, of course it does, but it's like, how are we going to do this? Where's the best place to put my attention? How do I understand this to bring the best outcome to this? And so it becomes a tool for living skillfully, basically. Yeah.
And so it's the key word for Capricorn that has been lost for so many thousands of years is sustainability. That is Capricorn's keyword.
If that comes out of this mess, train wreck and dumpster fire within a train wreck.
I don't think we should, assume it's going to change everything and that's it. We'll be done. Then we'll be on our way. But I think the process is definitely unfolding and continues to unfold with great astrological specificness. It's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this whole period, actually since the middle of 2018, has been about a fight to put Capricorn where it belongs, to take it away from hierarchy and put it into sustainability, to give it back its keyword.
If that comes out of this, I'll be right along. I'll be right on board. I'll be ecstatic.
It has to come out of it. There's no way. It has to come out of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we're kicking or screaming, it has to come out of it.
Well, you know what? We're going to come back and do another interview in December in the middle of it, just to see how things are going.
We should do one on January 8th when it's exactly conjunct the sun, at the turning point of from evening to morning star, right? Because there's about there's between 3 and 8 days where you can't, and you know, here we won't see it at all probably, but where you can't see, nowhere on the planet can you see Venus, because
Right.
she's cooking she's on the meat hook, right? And then miraculously she comes back in the morning, not in the evening. And
Yeah.
it's that's a very mystical, it's mystical transubstantiation or mutation or whatever of energy. Yeah.
All right. So our next date is January 8th to check in with the Venus on the meat hook.
We could, yeah.
All right. That sounds good. But I'd like to talk to you before then too, but
I'm
go
good.
for it.
I love to talk to you. I'll talk to you anytime.
Okay, good. And then we'll come back. We'll do another one about the eclipses, and then we'll do another one on January 8th to check in with Venus.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, the eclipse is in Sag. You mean the solar eclipse in Sag in December?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Date.
All right. Well, that was fun.
Okay. Thanks, Julie. Thank you for your wisdom and thank you for your insight.
Oh,
It's
thank
always
you.
helpful. Always helpful.
Great. Take care.
Okay, you too.